Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I never thought my life would change at a simple neighborhood barbecue. We were at our friend Carl's place. The kids ran around the backyard, hopped up on lemonade, while neighbors made small talk about nothing important. I was flipping burgers at the grill, feeling the heat on my face when Sharon walked over with a strange look in her eyes. She had already had a few glasses of wine, her cheeks flushed from the alcohol, and then, out of nowhere, she said it. "Mark," she announced, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You're a great father to our kids, but let's face it, you and I aren't really soulmates." At first I thought I heard her wrong. The sizzle from the grill, the chatter of guests, the laughter of children, it all felt too normal. Yet her words sank in, rattling me. A couple of people nearby turned to stare, but then quickly pretended they hadn't heard. I stood there holding a spatula, heart pounding. "Sharon, what are you talking about?" I asked, forcing a nervous laugh. "What do you mean we're not soulmates?" She shrugged, looking around like she had nothing to hide. "I'm just saying what's true. We don't have that connection anymore." I wanted to argue, to tell her this wasn't the time or place, but something in her eyes told me she didn't care about timing. She wanted me to know, publicly, that she was done pretending. We didn't fight in front of everyone. I just stared at her, feeling numb, as she turned and walked toward the house. Our neighbor Carl looked at me, awkward sympathy all over his face, but I ignored him. Suddenly those burgers looked burnt and the spatula felt useless in my hand. I couldn't finish grilling. I mumbled an excuse to Carl. "Sorry, I gotta go find Sharon," and set everything down. My throat was tight. I had a sick feeling in my stomach, like the floor was tilting under my feet. Inside the house, Sharon was chatting with another neighbor about the dessert table. She looked calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. I tried to catch her eye, but she breezed past me to refill her cup. I left the party soon after, telling Carl I had a headache. Sharon stayed behind with the kids, as if it were any other normal Saturday. That night, once we were both home and the kids were asleep, I confronted her. "What was that at the barbecue?" I asked. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." She rolled her eyes. "I'm sorry if it hurt your ego, but I'm tired of faking a perfect marriage. It's time we faced facts." "Facts about what?" "That we're not right for each other," she said flatly. "Haven't been for a long time." I stood there in the dim living room light, no clue how to respond. A knot formed in my chest. I felt like I was watching my own life from the outside, powerless to stop it. For a few days I tried to act normal. I got up, went to work, took care of the kids. Sharon was distant, but she didn't repeat her barbecue statement. She simply treated me like a roommate she barely acknowledged. I kept replaying that barbecue scene in my head. Why did she choose that moment? Why so public? And what made her so sure we weren't soulmates anymore? The idea that she might have someone else flickered in my mind, but I pushed it away. Sharon wasn't the type. Or at least I didn't think so. But the doubt grew. One night she came home late, texting on her phone the entire evening. She didn't tell me where she'd been. Another day she received a call and walked into the backyard to speak in hushed tones. My gut churned. Maybe I was paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then one morning I saw her phone lying on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. Normally I'd never invade her privacy, but desperation won. I needed to know what was going on. My hands trembled as I unlocked her phone. She'd once casually mentioned her passcode, and I remembered it. Her texts to a contact named Jeff confirmed my worst fears. They weren't graphic, but the affection was obvious. I read messages like, "Last night was perfect. I can't wait to see you again. I just wish I could break free of all this." My heart pounded. There was mention of meeting at a coffee shop, a fleeting reference to a hotel. Everything pointed to an ongoing affair. I felt a surge of rage. My stomach twisted at the realization that she'd been lying to me. She wasn't just bored with our marriage, she was seeing someone else. My hands were still shaking when Sharon stepped into the kitchen in her bathrobe. She saw me holding her phone. Her face went white. "What the hell are you doing?" she asked, snatching it away. "I could ask you the same thing," I shot back, my voice trembling. "Who is Jeff?" She glanced at the screen, then folded her arms. "You had no right to go through my phone. And you have no right to cheat on me," I said. So how long has this been going on? She didn't answer right away. She pressed her lips into a thin line, anger flashing in her eyes. I'm not doing this with you. I'm getting dressed and going to work. We're not just going to ignore this, I insisted, blocking her path. Tell me the truth. She took a deep breath, refusing to look at me. It started a couple of months ago. It's complicated. My chest felt like it was caving in. So it's real. You're actually with someone else. She nodded, keeping her gaze on the floor. Yes. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but maybe now you understand why I said we aren't soulmates. I haven't felt connected to you for a long time. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but tears stung my eyes instead. I stepped aside, letting her pass. She left the room, and I sank into a chair, staring blankly ahead, unable to believe what had just happened. That night I confronted Sharon in our living room after the kids went to sleep. The tension was unbearable. I can't believe you did this, I said. You owed me honesty. You're right, she replied, arms crossed. I should have told you sooner. I wanted to shout, to rage at her betrayal, but all that came out was a hoarse question. Do you love him? She hesitated. I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking for something I don't have with you. Excitement. Connection. It felt like a knife in my gut. So I'm just boring. That's it? Don't turn this into a pity party, she snapped. You think I wanted to hurt you? I've been unhappy for a long time, Mark. I thought maybe we could fix it, but we never really tried. I bit back the urge to tell her that I would have tried if I'd known how bad things were, but she seemed convinced that I was the problem. Maybe I was. Still, I couldn't let the marriage limbo drag on. Are you done? I asked quietly. Done with me? She swallowed hard, then gave a small nod. I think so. Yes. Something broke inside me. I felt numb, like all my emotions collapsed in on themselves. I walked to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and searched for information on filing for divorce. For the rest of the night, I didn't speak to Sharon. We slept in separate rooms, the silence more suffocating than any argument we'd ever had. The next day, I called a lawyer. I moved into the guest room officially, which was awkward when the kids asked why Dad was sleeping in Aunt Lola's old bed. We told them we just needed some space. I hated lying to them, but I wasn't ready for the bigger conversation yet. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Sharon didn't fight it. We both knew it was inevitable, and for the sake of the kids, we needed to make it official. Mediation was scheduled to sort out the details, custody, finances, the house, but none of it seemed to matter compared to the fact that our family was breaking apart. I dreaded telling Rachel and Sam. Eventually, we sat them down in the living room. Sharon and I forced calm expressions, but the kids sensed something was off before we even said a word. Rachel, being 9, figured it out immediately. Sam, only 6, didn't understand as much, but when the reality sank in, he started crying quietly. I tried to comfort him, but my throat ached with the weight of what we were doing. Watching their little faces crumble shattered me. I glanced at Sharon, silently blaming her for all of this. But when I saw the tears in her eyes, the guilt on her face, I realized she was just as heartbroken. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. I moved out a week later. I found a small apartment not far from the kids' school so I could still see them often. The place was decent, 2 bedrooms, a modest kitchen, but it felt empty. Every piece of furniture reminded me I was no longer home with my family. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Mediation turned into paperwork, and paperwork turned into court dates. What once felt like a slow unraveling of our marriage was now official. One afternoon, I packed up the last of my things, boxing up a lifetime of memories and leaving behind the home that no longer felt like mine. A few weeks into the divorce, I learned that Sharon wasn't trying to hide her new relationship. She openly introduced Jeff as her boyfriend to our children. At a school event for Rachel and Sam, I saw him casually chatting with the other parents while the kids ran around him, laughing and playing. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. Then one afternoon, as I arrived to pick up Sam, he ran up to me with a bright smile. "Dad, guess what? Jeff showed me a cool magic trick today." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. "Magic trick?" I asked, keeping my voice light even as something inside me twisted. Yeah, Sam chirped. He made my pencil disappear. Isn't that funny? It wasn't just Sam. Rachel, too, had started slipping Jeff's name into conversations, telling me how he helped with homework or took them out for ice cream. Every time I heard their innocent praise, I felt increasingly invisible, a ghost in the family I had once helped build. 2 months after moving out, I went to pick up the kids for my scheduled weekend. Sharon texted me to come inside because the kids were finishing dinner. When I stepped into our old home, the first thing I noticed was how different it looked. Sharon had rearranged the furniture, hung new pictures. There was a framed photo on the wall, her, Rachel, Sam, and Jeff, smiling. Some amusement park in the background. My stomach tightened. From the kitchen I heard voices. Sharon was laughing. Then his laugh followed. I walked in to see them finishing up dinner with the kids. They looked comfortable, like a family. Sharon turned when she saw me and gave a polite smile. Hey, Mark, we're almost done. Want some coffee while you wait? I forced myself to stay neutral. No thanks. Kids, you ready to go? Rachel and Sam nodded, stuffing the last bites of food into their mouths. Jeff wiped his hands and stood up, extending one toward me. Hey, man. Good to finally meet you face to face, he said, his tone overly friendly. I stared at his hand for a second. I didn't want to take it. But Rachel was watching. Sam, too. So I forced myself to shake it. Quick, firm, impersonal. Yeah, I muttered, refusing to make eye contact. Then I forced a tight smile and turned toward the door. My mind was racing with questions I had no answers to. How did Sharon move on so fast? Was she happier now than she ever was with me? And why did Jeff have to settle in so easily, like he belonged there? I got the kids buckled into the car. As we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of Sharon and Jeff standing in the doorway, laughing about something. That image stayed with me long after we left. It reminded me that I was the outsider now. On the drive home, I tried to push aside my resentment. Rachel and Sam chatted happily about their week, about school, about Jeff's jokes, about the things they had done with their mom. I kept quiet, nodding when appropriate. Once we got to my apartment, the kids settled in. While they watched a movie in the living room, I locked myself in my bedroom for a moment. I stared at the divorce papers stacked on my desk. Everything was finalized, except for a few financial details. I had always imagined a different future. Growing old with Sharon, watching our kids graduate, maybe grandkids someday. But now I had to accept a new reality. It wasn't easy, but I decided in that moment not to let anger poison my relationship with my children. If Jeff was going to be around, so be it. I couldn't change that. What I could do was be the best father I could be. One afternoon, Sam said, "Dad, I have 2 dads now." That stung, but I gently reminded him, "I'll always be your dad. No one can replace that." He grinned and asked if Jeff and I could both come to his soccer game someday. The idea felt impossible, but I managed to say, "We'll see." Later that night, after dropping the kids off, I sat in my car outside our old house, staring at its lit windows. Sharon had chosen another path, and our kids were adjusting in their own way. Holding on to hate wouldn't fix anything. Maybe someday I'd forgive her, and maybe I'd be civil to Jeff. But not yet. Right now I'm rebuilding my own life and staying anchored by Rachel and Sam's laughter. I realized I still had plenty to fight for. My children needed me, even if our family looked different now. Maybe looking back, I'd see this heartbreak as a turning point, one that taught me to value what really mattered and let go of what couldn't be saved. That barbecue shattered the world I knew, but I can build something stronger from the pieces, something more honest and real. It's not the life I planned, but it's the one I have, and I refuse to lose myself in regret. Thank you for watching.